Hello, welcome or welcome back. Just really quickly, we're going to talk about The Dead of Winter, which has become one of my favorite films extremely easily. And it's such an underrated film. It came out in 2025. It's a multifaceted action drama. It's perfected the art of haunting the narrative and flashbacks, to be honest. The pacing was perfect. It had zero issues with killing its darlings, which, if you don't know what that is, killing its darlings, or his darlings, her darlings, are when a director or maybe even editor has a problem with taking out unnecessary scenes. So, like, if you thought a movie was way too long, or things could have been taken out and the story would have been the same, or maybe even more effective, then they have a killing its darlings issue. If pacing is ever a problem for you, it probably is a problem with the director or editor not being able to kill their darlings. And so, this movie I thought had zero problem with that. The movie is a survival and rescue movie, but also it's about love and grief as well. And the idea of death and life are, in a way, their own characters with how much they play within the story of every single one of these people's journeys. Now, the contrast between the protagonist, Barb, and her relationship with her husband, Carl, versus the antagonists in their marriage was extremely, kind of forthright and obvious, but as well as insightful and well done. Because death just does something to you, you know what I mean? And everybody has a different kind of reaction to finding out their loved one is dying. Does that make sense? Not everybody is dying. Don't get me wrong, but some people just find out that they're dying sooner than others find out. Sometimes it's abrupt and you don't know what's going to happen. Sometimes it's long and it's slow. And unfortunately for Barb and her husband, it was long and it was slow. And for the antagonist, it was in a way portrayed as slow because they do get through the entire movie, but also fast because she's young. So for her, this is extremely terrifying. She should have at least 30 more years, but she doesn't. So she takes extreme measures. And it's sad to see just how much that fear can change a person or change the way that a relationship works. As compared to her relationship, the main character's relationship with Carl, and the love just went deeper. Carl, now speaking of haunting the narrative, Carl, by loving Barb, by bringing her to Lake Hilda for their first date and then asking her to have his ashes, put into the water at the lake, ends up saving the girl who was in danger. And by, having her spread his ashes in the lake also saves her life in the movie, and he's never in the present. He is never in the present time because he's dead. But he haunts the narrative so well, he saves 2 lives, okay, in a way. And he's in multiple flashbacks, and all of those flashbacks are very well put. And what I mean by that is, sometimes flashbacks are put in a movie or a TV show and it feels unnecessary. Why are we watching this scene right now? Or even, yes, I'm getting that you're giving me context, but why does that matter to this moment? Does that make sense? It could have been put earlier or later within the movie, and it wouldn't have made a difference. But in this film, all of the flashbacks of her and her husband Carl made sense to the present time and why it matters now. Like at one point, and I'm not trying to give you too many spoilers about the movie, but at one point, Barb is at the lake. She loses her ring, and one of the antagonists finds her ring and gives it back to her, which in a way influences her next decision about what to do with the antagonist. Carl and her relationship with Carl is a large part of this entire film without Carl ever being present. And that's just a perfect way to haunt the narrative. And it's so good. Like, I can't even explain it. So, to get back on track, this movie has so much action and fighting in it. But by Barb not being the typical feel no pain, I'm large burly man action hero, it also has this level of vulnerability and opens up the ending to be truly sad, or even, oh, this well-deserved tragedy. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, all of these characters are fighting for their lives, or in Barb's case, the life of somebody else. So it's extremely, rooted in this grit and this guttural need to survive, and it's so good without being, the cliche action hero, I get hurt, I get right back up, and means nothing. Now, the musical score, I would like to say really quickly, at first felt a bit fantastical. And I was like, why is there like a fantasy element to the music when it opens? You know what I mean? I didn't understand that, but as soon as we get into it and the music is ramping up just a little bit, the music is a bit subtle if you're not really paying attention to it. But once you get to the end, it's like it's in mourning. The music itself feels like it's in mourning, and it still has that fantastical element, but it just fits so well. This movie was gritty, it was real, it did not over-explain like I was expecting the viewers to be on their phones half of the time instead of just watching the movie. This is one of the best action movies I've seen in a long time. For real, like, no joke. 5 stars, man. Loved this movie. It hit the same after watching it a second time, okay? The stakes are high, the violence and the action were intense, and the story still had that level of depth that most movies just do not anymore. Very, very well done. It became one of my favorite films extremely fast. Like, top 10 for sure of action movies. Especially. It might be top 5 action movies I've ever seen. But films in general, I would say, maybe a top 10. So many films, and I was going to say recently, but for the longest time, to be honest with you, don't take themselves seriously. Rom-coms or romance films never portray true healthy relationship standards. And now, recently, they've added it with, well, how much sexually explicit content can they add without it becoming just straight up porn? Zero depth now and zero depth before, okay? Action movies are similar in the way that it's how many things can they blow up, or how many celebrities can they afford, or how many stunts will it take to make this cinematic or epic. But I would say this movie is cinematic, it's epic, it's romantic in a way that it talks about love. It's sad and tragic. I mean, certain mystery films will have depth now and again, but most nowadays are kind of just surface level comedies. It's A to B, who did it and why, but no depth in really perhaps the main characters themselves and their relationships, or even why is the why important, instead of it just being a why, A to B kind of storytelling. There's really no need for media literacy nowadays because the writers and directors aren't thinking that deeply or that layered, only enough to get paid and get butts and seats. But most of the characters in this film either learn a lesson about themselves or reaffirms a lesson about themselves in which they already knew. Like Barb, she reaffirms a lesson herself that she's a fighter, she's a survivor of many things, not just this situation. And I don't know, I just have to give this movie such a round of applause for just its multifaceted nature and the ability to be both an action film and a story about grief that's not surface level, oh, my husband's dead, ooh, so sad, who cares? You know what I mean? It really has that level of, why is her husband being dead even part of this conversation, and it shows you throughout the movie why it matters. Or the character that's, the girl that's been kidnapped in the film. You get to see kind of how Barb changes her in a way with, her Barb's unrelenting trying to save her life throughout the film. And you can tell, like, this is something this girl's never gonna forget. What are these characters learning about themselves and each other throughout this film? I'm just obsessed with it, as you can tell. There's so many things I could say, but to keep this short, loved it. Love Dead of Winter. If you have not seen it, watch it, okay? And let me know what you think. If your favorite action movies are the, stereotypical, I get hit, I get right back up. Or is it real grit, real depth? I like a quick little action. This was fun, but not much thought behind it. You know what I mean? Just a quick something to watch. Not something that could be on top 10 favorites of any kind. Some people watch movies for art, just to see a painting in a museum. And some people go up to the painting and inspect it. Sit there for 10 minutes just staring at one painting, trying to learn the backstory, trying to understand the depth of it. Let me know what you thought of this movie, if you have seen it. And if you haven't seen it, please go watch it. Please. I could not at all explain any more without giving you the entire movie, which I hope I haven't already. Explain just how good this movie is. It's amazing. I could not recommend it more, for sure. 10 out of 10. Yeah, I guess 10 out of 10, 9 out of 10. Let me know what you think. And I'll see you later.